Katrina Webb, dual gold medalist, Atlanta.
So that is a moment that I enjoy watching over and over again, a very special moment in my life where I got to carry the torch into the stadium for the opening ceremony of the Sydney 2000 Paralympic Games. The only time we've ever had a Paralympic Games in Australia, and there was 110,000 people in that stadium. And as I was underneath, getting excited to run through the fireworks, someone had to tell me in their excitement that the next moment in my life there was going to be 2.2 billion television viewers. Probably I would have liked to have known that afterwards, but back then we watched TV. Remember that? We watched it live because there was no other way to do it. Such an extraordinary moment in my career that I'm incredibly grateful for. Now, the next image that I'm going to bring up is also a moment in my life that, like carrying the torch into the stadium, was never in my goals or my plans. And some of you might be able to look at this photo and work out where it is after Jane shared some of my bio. The man in the blue suit in the middle you might recognise from the UN. And this was at the closing ceremony of the International Year of Sport and Physical Activity. So Kofi Annan is in the middle, and I was one of 4 athletes chosen from around the world to speak at this closing ceremony in New York. And we got to talk about the power of sport and the benefits to sport to promote peace, development, health and education around the world. Now, some of you might be looking at that photo trying to work out who the other athletes might be. And I reckon there's one athlete, looking at the demographic of you all here, that you should be able to recognise. Anyone be able to? Yeah, I heard someone. Did someone say Roger? Where'd that come from? Yeah, Roger Federer. Is there a few nods in terms of, yeah, some of you might be checking him out. And and if you take a bit of a closer look at Federer, he is to my left in the photo if you don't recognise him. Take a bit of a closer look at him, and do you think he was trying to check me out? He wasn't, but you know what? I'll keep saying that. It was an extraordinary moment for me, and you know, life has been incredibly amazing and also unpredictable. Like when I refer back to these moments in my life, I never thought anything like this would come my way. You know, to have that opportunity to bring the torch in and to be selected. These aren't things you can apply for. These are phone calls that you receive from people and they say, we want you as part of our team. And over the years, I've had some extraordinary moments like that, and I still continue to, which got me asking a few questions about who am I and what is it about me that people like, and people give me these opportunities to represent them on a world stage or a local stage. And for me, it really relates to the theme of your conference about leading through challenging times. I've had some challenging times, some times that I didn't expect come my way. But as I went through those times and I was able to learn new skills and build the tools of, you know, my toolkit to be bigger and stronger, they were the times that made me discover who I am and truly who I am. And when I was able to then let people see who I truly am and what I care about, that's when the opportunities come my way, which was extraordinary. So what I want to do today is share my story with you. Thanks for giving me the closing keynote. It's so wonderful to be here with you all. This is my home city, so I know you've got people. I met you in the lift from Darwin. It's so lovely to be here with you all in this beautiful city of Adelaide, and thank you for bringing the rain. How beautiful was yesterday. I walked for 2 hours in the rain and loved every moment. And Tim Jarvis is a very good friend of mine, so I gave him a call last night and said to him, how is the group? Got a bit of insight, and he said you were a fabulous group and you really look forward to spending today's session with all of you. So it's wonderful to be here. And I'll share my story with you, but I'll also share a couple of tools or tips that really made a difference for me along my journey of, being the best I could be or powering my best. I do also want to acknowledge Jordan. That was spectacular. I've been speaking for about 25 years now, and I don't think I've ever spoken after somebody who's talking about disability and neurodiversity. And I really want to congratulate Unimutual and the conference organisers to have myself and Jordan speak together on the last day. It really warms my heart and got me quite emotional thinking about how far we've come as humans to really care about empowering everybody. So well done. So as I progress in my story, I love to have a little bit of an intro because you've heard of I'm a Paralympian, and I'm sure many of you have not seen me before. And if you didn't do any research or know anything about my background, maybe you've been checking me out and trying to work out why I'm a Paralympian. Has anyone been doing that? I'd love to see if we've got some honest people in the room going, yes, thank you. And I'm hiding behind the lectern for this side, but most people do. When I come to a group of people and they haven't seen me before, they'll be like, oh, I wonder what's different about her. I wonder why she's a Paralympian. And the reason why I'm a Paralympic athlete is because I have a mild case of cerebral palsy. And when I found out what I had was cerebral palsy, my parents started to receive phone calls from their friends, and their friends were ringing and saying sorry. And I think they were saying sorry because at the time there was a national article in the paper that said star netballer has cerebral palsy, and they didn't know what that meant. Hands up, Jordan, you got everyone warmed up well. Hands up if you've heard of cerebral palsy before, and take a look around the room. I reckon that is everybody, why would you all have heard of it? Because every 15 hours in Australia a baby's born with cerebral palsy. And then if I ask you to pop your hand up again if you think you could tell me what the definition of cerebral palsy is. And I'm not going to make you do it, but if you think you could have a go, maybe pop your hand up. There's a little one there. Anyone else? And this is very common of groups that I speak. Everyone pop their hand up for knowing cerebral palsy, but then if I ask you what it is, people go, oh, I don't really know. And when people don't know, I think that's when the fear comes in, and that's why my parents' friends were saying sorry, because they didn't know what that actually meant. So if you were to Google cerebral palsy, it says something like this. It's a neurological condition caused by either an injury or malformation while a child's brain is being developed. So it's something that occurs before you're born. It's something that's permanent, you can't change it. It's not progressive, which I'm incredibly grateful for. There's a tiny percentage that's genetic or hereditary. They're still trying to work that out. But my 3 boys don't have cerebral palsy, and it's okay, it's not contagious. So thank you so much for sitting here. And I'm going to have lunch with you afterwards, so if you want to hang out and come and see me, it's all okay. Here's my brain. And I only had this done a few years ago, and I've always wanted to know what my brain looks like. Does anyone else out there love to know what their brain looks like? Yeah, and then other people go, no way, it's quite a divide. So this is my brain, and the view on the left-hand side is what we call a sagittal view, as if you could take a slice through my brain this way. And the view on the left side is a view coming in this side, if you could take an image and looking into my brain this way. Can you see the difference? Can you spot the difference? So in my left hemisphere, which is opposite to, you can just see the letter L, there's that whiteness. I can even point this out, it's a beautiful screen here. So this here is what we would call scar tissue, an injury that occurred before I was even born. The other image is quite significant. So you can see that white area, that shouldn't be there, that's my injury. So I could have done a somersault or moved in utero, and my umbilical cord could have got compressed, cut off some blood to my brain, which delivers oxygen. That's where a simple injury like that could have occurred. So what does that translate to? You can look at that and then you can look at me. And if I don't demo it, you'll keep looking at me. I know this by experience. So my right leg is mainly affected. Interesting statistics to carry on from your great statistics. 4.4 million people in Australia have a disability. And of that, what percentage do you think is invisible? Anyone want to throw some numbers at me? 80, 60, 80, it's 90. Yeah, so really good to know, because a lot of people I work with, they go, we don't know how to work with people with disability, we don't know how to get them into our workplace. I'm like, well, you already are, because if 90% is invisible, you already got them there. They might not be safe enough to share or might not have the reason to share. So my lower leg is mainly affected. Mine is, I can walk around day to day and most people don't recognise that I've got cerebral palsy. It's not completely invisible though, because if I had shorts on and I could stand like this, you could see the difference. You could probably even see the difference between my girths of my ankles. My right calf is thinner than my left. Because that injury occurred before I was born, my whole right side didn't form as strong as my left because it's the messages from my brain that don't get to my muscles as well. So if this is my foot, I actually can't curl my right toes at all. Yet I can do it really easily on my left side. And I come to my right side and I try every trick and I can't do it. I find that incredibly fascinating because it's so easy for me to do. And some of you might be checking out your own toe curling ability right now, are you? Yeah. See, I can make you do things today that you don't know. I can't point my toes very well, and to do a calf raise, if I do on stage now, I can do it because my left side is the leader and my right side's being the follower. I can just stand here, and even if I try and come up on my toes, it's so hard. I have to more jump and use all my other muscles, yet you can't see that day to day. It does affect my upper limb, not to the degree of my lower limb, but I will show you, and this is the only physical thing I'm going to make you do, so please participate with me, and it will wake your brains up. So I've got the last leg, so I need to get your brains working. So pop your hands out like this. Just be careful of your glasses, and if you've got any loose rings, you might want to take them off. So the idea is you turn your palms over and then turn them down and then up and down. And when you're comfortable, go as fast as you can go so it looks something like this. Sorry about that mic vibration. Okay. This one will take a little bit of time for mine to kick in, but I can feel it usually about now. Can anyone notice that my right side might be starting to slow down a little bit? Not be keeping up with my left side. I find it very hard to do while I'm talking, so I'll stop talking, but keep going, keep going, keep going. I really want your brains to be awake, and this is also a classification test for the Paralympic Games. So I always love to see if there's any new recruits. Okay, you can stop now. Or maybe a few too many reds. Brosso reds last night. Only joking. It always makes me puff, so it's always good to take a nice deep breath in for all of you after doing that activity. So the interesting thing about my cerebral palsy is I didn't know I had cerebral palsy until I was 18. It was picked up though when I was 3 that there was something different about me that my parents noticed. They noticed that when I started to get tired and as I walked around, I limped on my right side. And it wasn't going away. So I went off to see the local doctor in the year of 1980. So say if you're doing any calculations, I'm 47 years old. And I'd love for you to think back to the 80s or the 90s around Australia of what disability looked like. And even if you can remember some of the service providers that provided therapy for kids with particularly cerebral palsy or disabilities. Can anyone, there's 2 names that come to mind, national organisations that provided therapy for kids. Can anyone remember those names? Spastic Centre, yeah, good one. So the Spastic Centre of Australia or South Australia. And there was one more. I'm not sure if this one was in other states, but it was very much here in South Australia. It's now called Navita, which means new life, which is a beautiful approach looking at strengths of disability, not looking at deficits or what it is. But the other organisation was called Crippled Children's Association. Do you remember? Yeah, Crippled Children's. So imagine now if you had a child with cerebral palsy that had to go get therapy and you had to go to the Spastic Centre or to Crippled Children's Association. I mean, this is how society was and trying to do their best at the time. So when my parents went to the doctor in 1980, he had a good look at me, sent me off to a paediatrician, an orthopaedic surgeon as well, and it was picked up in that year that I did suffer a very mild injury to my brain. These didn't exist back then, so an MRI was never done. But what he was saying is I had this, which is cerebral palsy, and he never told my parents, though, it was a form of cerebral palsy. I knew that I had an injury to my brain. I knew it was the right side of my body, but the term cerebral palsy was never, ever told to my parents, which I find very peculiar because that's what it is. All I can think about is that there was such a stigma associated with it during that period, and I was incredibly mild that maybe he thought it was better just to go straight to what the cause is. So in that moment, I was then sent away, and I was treated for it like you would as if I had cerebral palsy. I had to wear this little night plaster to bed every night until I stopped growing. Now, I'm just under 6 foot, and from that point in time until I stopped growing was 3,500 nights. Now, how do I know that? Because when someone says you can stop wearing a plaster, when you stop growing, you count. I hated wearing this thing. I hated it. It was cold, it's ugly, and it's not much fun, and it made me feel like I was broken. Why? Because when I went to school and started to meet other kids at school, kids were wearing plaster at school, and it was quite a celebration. I don't know if anyone can remember back. You would get out, you'd sign and you'd colour, and it was kind of cool to break your arm or leg, which I'd never done. But I was hearing that kids were breaking their bones, and I was thinking to myself, wow, I have to wear a plaster every night, then I must be pretty broken. And now I understand what was going on then, but I remember thinking that, and I remember there was a feeling that came with it. I didn't know what it was, but I didn't like it. And I wanted to eliminate that feeling because it's not a good one. And I now know it's the feeling of shame. When you say that you're not good enough or you're broken, the emotion that comes with that is shame. And do we like shame? No. Like, it's not a feeling you want to party with. So I did everything I could to think about how could I get rid of that feeling, which meant I came home to my parents as a 5-year-old and said, can we not tell anybody? Can we keep it our family secret? And I remember when they said yes, I felt the most incredible relief that I could be the same as everybody else. And it wasn't as easy as it though. It meant that if I was hiding it, I had to work incredibly hard to make sure no one would ever see it. And I now understand that people with disabilities often do this. We then go to the other extreme and we become exceptional at everything because we don't want people to see that we are broken or that things aren't working as an able system is expected of us. So I worked incredibly hard. I was the perfect student. I was such a good kid. I still don't like breaking rules. I still like following the system. I still have trouble when I make a mistake because I wanted to be awesome. And if I made a mistake growing up, that's where I felt like people might see my disability. So I would get straight A's. I got ducks at my school. I went on to study physio at the University of South Australia. Have we got any of uni SA people here? Yay, that's my university. Graduated in 2000. And worked really hard academically and as a person, wanted to be liked. And I was born into a very sporting family. My dad was a very good footballer, AFL footballer, well, SANFL because AFL didn't exist in that time. I've got 2 cousins that made it to AFL level and another cousin, Rachel Spawn, who made it as a 3-time Olympic basketballer. So our family on both sides, incredibly sporty, and sport was compulsory in my household. Same for my 3 boys. It is a beautiful foundational skill. Whether you make it or not doesn't matter. But we played a lot of sport. And so for me, in sport, I did extra. So for me to work out how my body worked well, I did extra training. I worked extra hard along my journey and it paid off. In 1995, I won a scholarship to the Australian Institute of Sport as a netballer. So I finished Year 12 in 1994. I was encouraged to apply for a netball scholarship at the AIS in Canberra, and the Australian Institute of Sport back in the 90s was probably the best place to go for sport in the world. So excited. I was 17, all expenses paid, and thinking, wow, I'm making it, it's working. I've done it, I'm here. However, nothing in that year went to plan at all. And this is, as an 18-year-old, 17, 18-year-old, was the most challenging time for me. Firstly, I developed a significant knee injury. I got patella tendonitis in my right patella, which makes sense because we were doing a lot of court time and I don't have great shock absorption. I tend to land pretty brutal and my tendons just started to break down. I then was sidelined for 10 weeks, a ton of therapy, got well enough to play again. We had 12 in our team, only 10 you ever need to travel with netball because that still gives you 3 reserves. So there was always 2 emergency reserves and I was an emergency reserve, which I had been for 10 weeks because of my injury. And I thought, that's okay, you've just got back on the court. work even harder. And they say, whoever they may be, that hard work always pays off. Let me tell you, it doesn't. It is a wonderful skill to have, but I was the hardest working. I was the athlete in that squad that did everything right, yet I still couldn't get picked for the team because I couldn't change my anatomy. And I found that difficult because it was something I couldn't control. And the coach who wasn't picking me was telling me the truth that I wasn't good enough. So again, I'm 18 and I'm putting this all together. And then the next thing that happens in that year is there happens to be Paralympic coaches at the Australian Institute of Sport training a squad of athletes to go to the next Games in Atlanta in 1996. And one of the coaches was named Chris Nunn. He was married to Glenys Nunn, Olympic gold medalist. They're divorced now, good friends. And he happened to be walking around the AIS this particular day. He walked behind me and he could notice my cerebral palsy straight away. Can you imagine this moment? So I'm walking around the AIS as a netballer, then all of a sudden a Paralympic coach who knows what cerebral palsy looks like starts to walk behind me, and he just kept following me. He kept following me everywhere I went until he was brave enough to stop me and say, "Hey, I'm Chris Nunn, I'm the Paralympic coach. I'd love to chat to you about, something I've seen." And he said to me, "I think you've got cerebral palsy. Did you know that?" And that was the first time I'd ever heard that term. I told him what I've told you all, and then we had a conversation. And he said, "Look, I think you should go and get a few tests and let's see if you've got cerebral palsy, because if you do, you're eligible for the Paralympic movement." So I thought, okay, I can go do a few tests. So we had physios and a whole medical system set up. So I went and had some further assessments, and it was confirmed or labelled what I had was cerebral palsy. Now, when this news got to Chris Nunn, can you imagine how excited he was? He's like, "This is the best news ever. This woman has got to the AIS under being an athlete without a disability, and she's got cerebral palsy." Like, I couldn't think of a better situation. So he had to come and find me on this particular day, and it was like he just appeared out of nowhere, and he had a big smile on his face and his hands were rubbing together, and he said to me, "Oh, Katrina, guess what? It's cerebral palsy." He was so excited and pumped up. It was like I'd won, like he was announcing that I won the lottery, if it gives you some context. And I had never heard that term, and I struggled with it. And then he said to me, "In a year's time, if you can get classified, which you've done one test, so you've got to have enough cerebral palsy, then once you've got enough, we'll classify you so you compete on a level playing field." That's classification. "And if you can qualify in a Paralympic sport," he was an athletics coach, so he wanted me to go that way, "you could come with us to the Atlanta Paralympic Games." Now, does anyone think I was jumping for joy, couldn't believe my luck, couldn't wait to sign the dotted line? There's a lot of no's. Yeah, you're exactly right. And what drives my work every day, like I think of, I don't know how many years will take for this group to be able to nod, and including myself, to go, if someone gets discovered, if a kid gets discovered that they've got a disability and they find out that they could be a Paralympian, that they respond just like a kid who hasn't got a disability that finds out that they could be Olympian. That drives my work every day, and we've still got a lot of work to do. What I thought and felt was, you've just said I can become a Paralympian, which means that people know that there's something wrong with me, and I really hated that part about myself. And that then triggered a lot of my shame and a lot of my fears. So Chris knew, he knew that this would be a very sensitive moment in my life. He didn't take it lightly. And he said to me, "Katrina, to make the right decision for you, don't rush it. Why don't you go and speak to somebody about it?" And so this was a huge learning for me as an 18-year-old, and one that I've always taken through my career. Whenever there's change or challenge, who can I speak to? Who's in my support team that I can work with to help get through something? I learned from a very young age as an athlete that you don't have to do it alone, that you have a team of people around you that help you. And this coach said to me, "Why don't you go and speak to the sports psychologist, and they'll be the best person to think about your thinking and think it through so you can make a good decision." And I just said, "Of course I will." I had a psychologist on tap at the AIS. It was free. But I'd had a psychologist in my team since I was 14 because I'd come through SASI, the South Australian Sports Institute. Have a think about that. Did you have a psychologist in your team at 14? To go from being great to extraordinary. And maybe some of us had a psychologist in our team because why? Most of the time it's offered to us when? When we've hit rock bottom, when we're burnt out, worn out, stressed out, suffering, grief or major trauma, a crisis, which is very, very much needed. Absolutely needed, and incredible professionals that can help you. But why did I get to have one in my team to go from here to here? And so for me, there was no stigma associated with seeing a psychologist. It was a part of high performance. And the psychologist was amazing. He said, okay, we're going to think about your thinking. We're going to put all of your thinking out on the table, and then we're going to take the time to look at it. We're going to check that it's true. I don't know if you know this, but just because you have thoughts, that doesn't mean they're true. Is anyone else like that? So we need to challenge our thinking. We need to make sure it's factual because we can make up stories and make up false information or fall into thinking traps. We need to make sure we've got all of your thinking. Is there other people we need to talk to? Do we need to get some more evidence in front of us so you can make a really good decision? And wouldn't you do that in insurance? Wouldn't you do that in universities, that you would take the time to put everything on the table and look at where you're at? So I did that as an individual, put all of my thinking out on the table, and he did it in a simple way of going, what are you worried about and what are the opportunities? And the worries were very simple and very common, I'm sure of you all. The first big one, which I still have that come up for me regularly when I challenge myself or are challenged, is what will people think? What will people think? Will they like me? Will I fit in? What happens if I make a mistake, or what happens if I fail? I have them come into my life often because I like to challenge myself. When I went on air with Channel 9 last year in Paris, did they turn up really loud? Yes. Because doing live crosses, which I don't do very often, you don't want to stuff up because you can't undo live television. However, I've had people in my team over the years to help me manage my negative thoughts so I don't get stuck in it. And this is the problem for a lot of people in their mental health, or just even in powering their best, is you get stuck in your negative thoughts. You think you are your thoughts, and that your decisions and your actions are caused by that. Where the psychologist said to me, hop out and let's look at the opportunities. And when I did that, something extraordinary happened. I looked at what I was writing down. I could represent my country. I could travel the world, which I'd never been overseas before. I could still do sport. I could maybe win a gold medal, which started to get me pretty excited. And the most important one for me was maybe I could help someone else along the journey. And as soon as I started to write those down, something extraordinary happened, that I realised all of my goals and values that I was hoping to achieve as a netballer were written down in front of me. What was different was the packaging. And that's an incredible learning for me, is whenever I'm dealing through challenges or difficult situations, I anchor in on my values. And when you use your values as your guiding compass, the packaging changes because there's never a destination with your values. If that makes sense, it's always a direction that you go. So you become more innovative and you see amazing ideas and solutions. So in that moment, I knew that the Paralympics was for me. Did it make it easy? No. But I knew that that's where I needed to head. And the biggest motivator, to be honest, was asking myself this question around, why do I hate being different so much? And I asked myself that question because I was exhausted of trying to cover it up. Exhausted of trying to self-edit to fit into a system that wasn't different or didn't celebrate difference. And I didn't want to be known for that. And I thought, you know what, if I go to the Paralympics, I still get to be the best athlete I choose to be, but this gives me a platform to be able to share my difference. And I'm hoping that I will learn some tools, because I didn't have them in my kit, of how to celebrate difference. And I knew that if I could do that, then maybe I could help one other person along my journey. That for me, I was in. My value of helping people surpasses my value of excellence. So once I got that one in the vision, I knew I needed to be there. So that's where my story went. I went to Atlanta in 1996, which was amazing. I went to the sport of athletics very quickly And in Atlanta, I won 2 gold and a silver medal for the 100, 200 and long jump, which was extraordinary. Why did I do so well early? Because I got to compete on a level playing field. It makes sense, doesn't it? I never thought I was good at athletics. I came 5th or 6th, but when you race against people who are your classification, the results showed. I loved the Paralympic movement. I loved every part of it. I loved it because we all had a disability and no one cared. It was like the norm, if that makes sense. And the bit I loved about it is everybody had a story, and everyone in the Paralympic movement had found tools to help continuing to power their best. There are a lot of people that don't make the Paralympics that have a disability or aren't athletes, but having the tools, everyone has the ability to have resilience. And we hear a lot about post-traumatic stress disorder, but we don't hear a lot about post-traumatic growth. And it is a real thing. And most people who have a crisis or a challenge in their life grow. Most people do. And that's what I felt at the Paralympic Games, and I wanted to be a part of that moving forward. The next Games, of course, were in Sydney in 2000. I competed in the 100, 200 and 400, came back with 2 silver and a bronze, which was great. However, if I'm totally honest with you all, I actually felt like I failed because I didn't run any personal bests in Sydney. And as an athlete, we only have 4 years, a bit like getting a uni degree, and I didn't show up to my best. Yes, I was good. My best didn't show up on the day, and if it did, I would have got to that gold medal level. So I had to learn to do a lot of things differently leading into the next Games. And one of those was spending a lot of time thinking about building my levels, my systems, thinking about the systems that I had underneath and what I could do to really get to that next level as an athlete. Because, you know, in life, particularly in challenges, but even along our pathway, we don't rise to the level of our goals. You always fall to the level of your systems. And I really wanted to get my systems to another level. So people ask me, what were some of the things I looked at? What did I try and do differently? And did I do anything differently to try and get back to a gold medal level in Athens? And yes, I did, and I'm going to talk about those in just a second. But here's a photo of me competing in the Games in Athens, and I won gold at my first Paralympic Games, and as I said, I won silver in Sydney. I actually won silver at every event I competed in from Atlanta through to Athens. I got really good at winning silver. And so in Athens, by doing things differently, I got back to this incredible gold medal, which is me running across the line after running a 400 metres. I had no idea I put my arms up. I saw that photo afterwards. It was just a natural process, but I was totally exhausted. But I finally got back to a gold medal level again with a PB in Athens, which was extraordinary. I'm really happy to pass this around if you would love to. Would you be happy to pass that and as I up here for the next 10 or 15 minutes? Amazing moment for me to get back to that gold medal level. So what did I do differently, and what can I share with you for you to take away at the end of the conference to think about that really helped me to get back to that best level myself? But also, I haven't competed since 2006, and I use these principles every day in my life, whether it's in running my business in Australia or overseas, whether it's parenting 3 boys and having a great relationship with my husband and my 2 girl cavoodles, whether it's with my friends. It's about how I choose to live. And I really want to try and bring my best in everything that I can do. So these are the things I spend a lot of time working on. And this was the difference between me staying at a silver level. And my psychologist actually said to me after Sydney, when I felt like I failed, I actually sat down with my psychologist, and she said to me, if you're okay with being at a silver level, there's nothing wrong with it. And if you're okay with not achieving your best, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you want to be known for bringing your best and getting back to a gold medal level, you need to do things differently. So one of the first things I spent time looking at was the first area, was purpose. And it was really tapping into, do I want to be known? What do I want to be known for? Like, who am I? What am I paying forward? What's my legacy? What's my story? What do I want people to say about me? And what we do know is when we can tap into our purpose, it is one of the best things we can do for our performance. And as individuals, where do we start? One of my good friends, if you want to know more about purpose, and particularly in leadership, Zach Mercurio, is based in America. He has studied this inside and out. And this is a very simplified version of where he says purpose comes from. And it's that sweet point in the middle between what are your talents, your skills, if you're in insurance or if you're in finance, in business, HR, whatever it is, what are your unique talents and skills? What are you passionate about? And what impact do you want to have? And if you can find that sweet spot in the middle, that's where we start to talk about our own individual purpose. And it helps us to have meaning in life. It's our fuel that helps us to get out of bed in the morning. And I really had to get clear on what that was for me in every way that I was living my life, particularly to get back to that gold medal level. This is something that I spent a lot of time working on. Has anyone done their character strengths? Anyone else done their, maybe half a dozen, maybe 10 of you? I love their smiles here. I'm sure you're even using them as one of your tools within neurodiversity. I love this. If you haven't seen it before, that's the website. However, I'm going to send Christine an amazing handout with lots of resources and electronic links so you can go and do a lot of this stuff afterwards. I teach a lot of mental health and wellbeing, and the evidence behind character strengths is incredibly strong for us to not only boost our wellbeing and our performance, but it's also a really great guiding point for us to tap into purpose. There's 24 character strengths in the middle of that pie, and they sit under 6 different virtues. And if you go to that website, you'll do a quick survey and you'll get an output of 1 to 24. The strengths that are up the top, let's say your top 5, are what we call your signature strengths. They're positive traits that you show in your behaviour. They're wonderful, they're different to your skills and talents because they're aligned to your core values. And the VIA in that website is values in action. So the ones that are high for you, because you've got them all, but you can't be dominant with 24. The top 5 are what we call your signature strengths. And it's how you show people what you care about in life through your behaviour. This is a great place for you to take away, to take a deeper dive into uncovering a little bit more about your purpose and how you contribute. Zach Mercurio talks about purpose being how you contribute with your unique skills to others to have impact. The second area, I could talk about performance all day. As athletes, this is what we spent a lot of time working on, and particularly for me to go from silver back to gold, I really had to hone in on this. I had a huge learning after Sydney when I didn't PB and when I sat down with my psychologist, was that I had said yes. So I won gold in Atlanta. I had said yes to everyone and everything that had come my way in life. I was studying full-time at uni because I thought I didn't have to go half-time. I was working part-time. I was living out of home. I said yes to any charity, board, community event. And I was really good at time management from a quantity point of view, but not a quality point of view. And my psychologist looked at everything that I was doing and she said, wow, you are doing way too much. No wonder why you're not performing at a PB level. So my strength of loving to help people didn't have a boundary of being able to say no to the things that weren't really important or aligned with my purpose. And she taught me how to say no. And how to say no with love, because that's how I like to do it. But when I was able to say no, I found the time to do the stuff that mattered. And that, when I want to talk about performance, is having the energy and the time to do the things that mattered. Particularly when you're going through challenging times, you need energy. And for athletes to win gold medals, we need to learn to master our energy at that given point in time on the track or on the court. So I created an energy management audit. I thought you might like that, being in the risk and insurance industry. If you'd like to do another audit, or maybe I should rename that to a maybe more inviting word instead of an audit. Some people go, no, don't give me an audit. Or maybe you do. You go, yes, I love an audit. This is a really great thing that you can do after this. I'll send you the whole downloadable form, and it'll give you some things to think about in terms of how do you manage your energy. And when we're leading through challenging times, which isn't that where we are now, how can we bring our best? What can we do to take care of ourselves? And I've got physically, mentally, emotionally and spiritually in there. And you'll find at the back page is something quite unique that says, is like a diary, and it encourages you to schedule meetings in with yourself during the week to take care of yourself. And it doesn't have to be an hour, it could be take a minute, can be all you need. Do you know, when I was an athlete, I never got paid full time, so I was still working, studying. If you wanted to meet me on a Tuesday at 10 and I was still competing, I'd say, no, I'm training. You go, of course you are. Let's find another time. I have never felt that respect anywhere else that when I was an athlete, that people knew that training was non-negotiable. And 90% of the time that I trained, except for the 10% of when we did hill sprints, and I wouldn't be feeling great after that, 90% of the sessions I came out with even more energy to fuel the stuff I needed to do. So I'd love for you to think about, do you meet with yourself? And could you schedule meetings in with yourself that are non-negotiable? That could help you to take care of your energy as we move through 2025. There's another an area that I'm going to just touch on, and I'll send you some great links to this. I've mentioned it a lot. I've mentioned psychology a lot today, but if I was to give you one thing that really helped me make a difference in terms of winning gold and getting back to gold, was investing heavily in my psychology. You know, before I had any of those tools in my kit, I didn't need anyone to sabotage me because I could do a very good job of it myself. Yeah? I don't know if anyone else relates to that. I just needed the tools to be able to challenge myself, to think about my thinking, to know that I could fall in thinking traps. LeBron James says it beautifully. Before you can win the game on the court, you need to win the mental and emotional game in your mind. I mean, we hear this in sport, but imagine that said, before you can win the game at work, you need to win the game, mental game and emotional game in your mind. Somehow sport accepts it, but in workplace it's coming. So if I could give you one thing to think about in terms of training your mind, one takeaway, it is this. I have a license to teach a program called the Be Well program. It is university and SAMRI. We have the South Australian Health and Medical Research Institute here. It was developed with SAMRI, 2 researchers, and Flinders University. So it's evidence-based. It took 3 years to look at and build. So it's a mental health and wellbeing program that is based on developing people's psychological tools. It was developed by the 2 researchers in the bottom left-hand corner, and this is a summary of their 3 years of research. And they don't really like this slide because it took 3 years to do a meta-analysis or a systematic review of over 430 psychological studies that built our mental health and wellbeing. And you can see the interventions down the left-hand side, and you can see the different psychological outcomes across the top. They all work, and if you know a little bit about psychology, there are some beautiful, amazing ones in there that I use to win gold as an athlete, like CBT, like acceptance commitment therapy or ACT. Have a look at the one that gets all the ticks though. Did you know that? And if you didn't know that, there's my takeaway for you. Because if you haven't got a lot of time, but we know we're more stressed and we have more challenges and we have students and we can impact others, this is the ring that rules them all, if we want to go back to the Lord of the Rings. It will help all the 6 different psychological outcomes. It will reduce stress, reduce anxiety, reduce depression, build our positive emotion, decrease our negative emotion, and build our overall mental health and wellbeing with mindfulness. So I encourage you to explore mindfulness. I haven't got time, and it's not my job now to teach mindfulness here. I can in other programs, but I'd love for you to go away and think about What is it? How can you do it? And could I find a practice that works for me? Yeah, can I find a practice that works for me? As athletes, we never called it mindfulness, we called it being in the moment. Buddhists call it nowness. It is a trained skill to live and work in the present moment. What we do know is that our mind wanders all day long. It loves to think all day long if we let it. And even as you're listening to me today, you might have been able to stay present, and you might have gone on to think about, oh, my flight's coming soon, oh, the bus is coming soon, oh, lunch, whoops, I got distracted. Then you bring yourself back to Katrina. And then you might wander off again, and then you bring yourself back. Mindfulness is a skill, and a trained skill that takes practice. Living and working from the present is an amazing place to be, because what the research does show that when we go into the past and in the future, it doesn't take long for us to worry about things, which leads to anxiety and depression. So maybe that's something you can think about and explore, and I'll send you some really good links to things that you can take away from this presentation. So I really want to sum up and wrap up as the day comes to a close, and tapping into this beautiful thing called potential. Jordan, thank you so much. I feel like what you gave the group before me about how do we tap into people's potential? How do we support people's potential? How do we realise that difference is humanity, that disability is humanity, that neurodiversity is humanity? And how do we create safe spaces? And how do we have tools in our kit to support people to be their best? And it starts with being your best yourself and doing the work on yourself. Do you know the tools that I learnt to win a gold medal, particularly the psychological tools I learnt to win gold with, were the exact tools I needed in my kit to love and, in fact, accept first, but I actually love the fact that I have cerebral palsy. You've probably never heard anybody say that. It has been my biggest gift. It has been my biggest teacher. It has given me unique character strengths that the world needs, including being able to see beauty and difference in others that other people can't see. And I can hold incredible space for people to grow and develop because of my cerebral palsy, not looking at it as a deficit. And as I've travelled around the world and spoken, I've shared the fact that I have cerebral palsy, and you never know who's listening. And one day I was teaching some resilience skills, and there was this teacher sitting in the audience. And when I mentioned the term cerebral palsy, she couldn't wait to come up to me in the break to say hello. Why? Because she had this young girl in her class at that moment who had cerebral palsy that looked very similar to me. And then she went on to tell me she was really struggling. She was embarrassed. She was angry. She had shame around it. And she was in age 9, year 2. She was in year 2 and she was age 9. And she said, do you think you could write her a little note and maybe I could give that to her next week, and that could be the thing that helps her to see that, you know, she has this beauty and difference that others don't have. And I said, yes, of course. Not only did I write a little note, out came a 3-page letter, and I think it was actually to my own 9-year-old self. But this teacher was amazing. She got the letter, pictures of me on the internet, got this massive frame. And I went a step further and said, if we get permission, can I come into the classroom and can I meet someone? And can I share a little bit of my story and bring my medals in? And her dad was a teacher at the school, and it happened so easily, and this photo was taken after. And I don't have to say much at all. If you can look at our eyes and look at our smiles, I have been trying to search for that feeling of winning gold in my life. I've trekked Everest Base Camp twice, I've walked Kokoda, I try and put on big events myself and do lots of extraordinary things, and couldn't match it until this happened. And this for me is a feeling that way surpasses your own personal performance, when you're able to understand yourself, take care of yourself and pay it forward to somebody else. The letter that I received from her parents is the most beautiful thing I've ever received in my life. So you've got to the end of the conference, everybody. Have a think about who you are. Have a think about what your purpose is. Is there a few little things that you can add to your performance, and how can you tap into more of your potential, and even greater, how can we create wonderful safe spaces for the beauty and difference that's all around us, for everyone to achieve their potential? Thank you. Thanks, everybody.